Hello, in this short video tutorial I'd like to show you the immediate load feature which is available with exoplan Matera and DentalCAD Matera. Currently we are in the exoplan Dental DB and I've already loaded the John Doe demo case. In this case we are planning an implant on tooth 36. The final reconstruction type can be selected later. Let's have a look at the planning. And as you can see now, I've already prepared and finished the planning and the tooth placement. The entire planning workflow will be demonstrated in a separate tutorial. In the report, we can now check which implant has been selected for this case. Then we close and save the planning. Then I will show you how the planning can be shared between the lab and the dentist. You can do that either by sending it through the Dental Share, sign in with your login and your password, then choose the desired service. In this case, we choose Implant Planning Review. Choose your partner. Make sure you have included the implant planning info file. Then click on OK and upload the data. There's a second option available to use the immediate load feature. The DentalCAD application can be integrated into the exoplan, and if it's installed correctly, an immediate load button will appear in your exoplan Dental DB. A simple click will automatically start this project in the DentalCAD application. Please note that a DentalCAD dongle is required. The immediate load feature in Matera is still a prototype version. Furthermore, it's very important that you have correct prosthetic libraries that are compatible to the exoplan libraries. For further questions or to make sure your libraries are correctly installed, please contact your reseller's support. We start by importing the implant planning info file and the tooth placement. In the first step, we can verify and correct the tooth placement that has been prepared during the planning process. Then you proceed to the next step. And here again you can see a reminder that this is a prototype version and it should only be used for testing. If you have copied and installed the exoplan implant libraries to the DentalCAD implant libraries, the planned implant will be displayed as you can see here. If you did not install those libraries, only a placeholder will be displayed instead. In this step we can select the desired connection for the implant and the reconstruction types. You can do a custom abutment or screw retained crown. Then you can choose direct to implant if you have a library with an interface that can be milled or if you have a pre-milled part. Or you can choose to do it on a T-base. And here, depending on the library, you can choose to do a cementable crown or bridge or to glue it directly on the T-base. Okay, in this tutorial we will design a custom abutment with a provisional crown on this abutment. And we will do that on a T-base, which we can choose here in the drop-down list. Of course, you could also do a screw-retained provisional crown. In this case, different T-base libraries are available. We can choose between different heights and between different gingiva heights. Let's choose a T-base with a gingiva height of 2 mm. And now you have the ability to rotate the T-base in your implant. In this case, we have a square-shaped interface, therefore we can only rotate it in 90-degree steps. A hexagon, for example, would allow you to rotate it with 60 degrees. The following work steps are exactly the same as in the normal custom abutment workflow. This will be shown in a separate tutorial. There's one difference here in the emergence profile step. As the implant has not been placed yet, you cannot see the emergence profile in the patient's jaw scan. Therefore, I draw the emergence profile border directly on the patient's gingiva, and I use the anatomical tooth placement as a visual helper to do this correctly. Then we proceed to the next step. And here you can still change the emergence profile border. The rose color means that those points are attached to the gingiva. You can find more details about this in a separate tutorial. And now I will adjust the emergence profile shape. You can do that very quickly by just using those top angle and bottom angle sliders. Then we proceed to the freeforming step. And we can still freeform the anatomical tools library, and we can adopt the occlusal and approximal contact points. Of course, you can also use and try the block out neighbor collisions feature, which will block out the undercuts in the adjacents. For provisional crowns and implants, I would recommend to choose a higher distance for the occlusal adaptation. This will decrease the force applied on the implant. Now I will smooth the transition zones between the anatomical tools and the emergence profile. You can do that now or later when designing the superstructure on the abutment. Then we proceed to the next step. Now we can choose the secondary insertion direction for the abutment. As in this case the implant has been placed perfectly, we can continue with the direction of the implant. Then we proceed to the next step. And here we do the abutment design. If you just want to create a customized healing abutment for the emergence profile, I'd recommend to pull the entire upper curve downwards and create a very small conical upper part of the abutment. But in this case, I will show you how to create a customized abutment with a secondary crown. Let's do that quickly. This will be shown in detail also in a separate tutorial. Then proceed to the last step of the abutment. Here we can still freeform the abutment. Let's skip that and let's finish the primary part. And then we choose to continue by designing the superstructure now. There might be a slight difference between the planned implant position and the real implant position. To compensate this, from my experience, I usually choose a higher value for the cement gap in this step. Okay, let's try it with 0.1. And then we proceed to the last step. Now the minimum thickness will be generated and the anatomical tools will be adapted to the margin line. That's the result. This is our provisional crown on a customized abutment on a planned implant. You could still continue and freeform on the restoration or simply save and export the entire restoration. Thank you for watching.